In the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This time, I'd like to open this up for the Citizens Open Forum. If there's anyone here from the public who wishes to comment or discuss a matter that is not on today's agenda, we'd welcome you to come forward. Okay, move on to awards and proclamations.
Item 4.1, the month of May 2010 as National Foster Care Month in the City of Salina. Nina Shaw-Woody, Youthville Recruitment Manager, will read the proclamation.
Thank you. Whereas there are approximately 496,000 American children and youth in foster care, and nearly half of the young people in foster care are over the age of 10. And whereas there are more than 5,000 children in foster care system in Kansas, most placed temporarily due to parental abuse and neglect. And whereas there is an urgent need for foster families to care for teenagers, special needs, and sibling groups. And whereas the City of Salina shows appreciation to all foster parents for their selflessness and dedication to helping children in need. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Aaron G. Peck, Mayor of the City of Salina, Kansas, do hereby proclaim May 2010 as National Foster Care Month in Salina, and call upon all citizens, community agencies, religious organizations, medical facilities, and businesses to increase their participation in our efforts to bring awareness to foster care and the need for foster parents. May 24th, 2010.
Thank you. Do you have any special events planned to commemorate the month?
Yes, on June 5th, they'll be at Oakdale Park, and they'll have a special appreciation at 5:30 for all the foster parents.
Okay, very good. I have a signed copy of this proclamation for you.
Thank you, sir.
Item 4.2, a proclamation of recommitment of full implementation of the Americans with Disability Act will be read by the Accessibility Advisory Board Chair.
Hello, my name is Sharon Luca, and I'd like to read the proclamation. A proclamation of recommitment to full implementation of the ADA. Whereas on July 26, 1990, President George H. Bush signed into law the Americans with Disabilities Act to ensure the civil rights of people with disabilities. This legislation established a clear and comprehensive national mandate for the elimination of discrimination against individuals with disabilities. And whereas the ADA has expanded opportunities for Americans with disabilities by reducing barriers and changing perceptions, increasing full participation in community life. However, the full promise of the ADA will only be reached if public entities remain committed in their efforts to fully implement the ADA. And whereas on the 20th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, we, the City of Salina, celebrate and recognize the progress that has been made by reaffirming the principles of equality and inclusion and recommitting our efforts to full ADA compliance.
Very good. Thank you.
Now, therefore, I, Mayor Aaron G. Peck, do hereby reaffirm our commitment to work toward full ADA compliance in the City of Salina. Thank you.
Thank you. And do you have any special events or anything planned to commemorate this?
Yes, we do.
We do, Mayor, on July 23rd. July 26th is the anniversary date. July 23rd, OCCK is planning a march from Jerry Ivy Park or from the mall to Jerry Ivy Park, and then from 11 to 2, they're going to have an agenda. They're going to have vendors and activities and food and things to celebrate the day.
Okay, very good. Sharon, I'm going to bring down a signed copy of the proclamation here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to public hearings and items scheduled for a certain time.
Item 5.1, public hearing on petition number 4325, requesting a vacation of a public drainage easement in the replat of Foley Addition. Sub-item 5.1A, first reading ordinance number 10-10,533. Sub-item 5.1B, accept the public drainage easement dedication in Lot 2, Block 1 of the replat of Foley Addition.
Mr. Frazier.
Mayor and Commissioners, on November 19th, the City Commission accepted a drainage easement for HM Olathe LCC to accommodate a detention pond on the site. Plans for that site since have changed, and the location of the detention pond is in a different spot right now. So this action that you have here before you needs Commission approval so that they can make the changes. Ordinance number 10-10533 will release the existing drainage easement. The detention pond complies with the city design criteria. There's no fiscal impact to the city of Salina here, and staff is recommending two actions be taken by the Commission. The first is approve Ordinance 10-10533 on first reading, vacating the portion of Lot 2, Block 1 in the replat of the Foley Addition of the City of Salina, Saline County, Kansas. The second action would be to accept the offered drainage easement dedication in Lot 2, Block 1 of the replat of the Foley Addition. We'd be happy to answer your questions.
Okay. Questions of staff at this time? Okay. Any public comment? Greg, do I need to open this public hearing up formally? I'm not
That would
sure.
probably be best, yes.
Okay, before a motion is made. Just
Yes,
open.
yes, Mayor.
Okay. This public hearing is officially open. I don't have a gavel up here. All right. Seeing there's no public comment, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 10-10533 on first reading, vacating the portion of Lot 2, Block 1 in the replat of Foley Addition of the City of Salina, Saline County, Kansas.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt on first reading ordinance number 10-10533. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-0.
Mayor, I move that we accept the offered drainage easement dedication in Lot 2, Block 1 of the replat of Foley Addition.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the public drainage easement dedication in Lot 2, Block 1 of the replat of the Foley Addition. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-0. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of May 17, 2010. Item 6.2, resolution number 106743, authorizing a contract with Bigelow Companies Incorporated for providing advisory assistance in the planning and implementation of upgrading the management systems of the in-house food service operation at the Bicentennial Center.
Is there any item that a commissioner has a question on or would like removed from the consent agenda? If not, I would accept a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-0. Moving on to development business.
Item 7.1, application number A 10-1, requesting annexation of a 150-acre tract of land located at the northeast corner of Schilling Road and Ohio Street, east of and adjacent to the Quail Meadows Estates Commercial Addition, and to be known as the Stone Lake Addition. Sub-item 7.1A, first reading ordinance number 10-10,547.
Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is an application that was filed by Compro Realty, and they're doing that on behalf of Sparrowhawk Land Company and Allsop Sand Company, and they are headquartered in Concordia, Kansas, and are the owners of this property. And the question related to this particular piece of property is whether this 150-acre tract of land should be annexed into the city in order to obtain municipal utilities and services, and to serve a proposed residential and commercial development in this location. As we noted, there are two ownership parcels here. The one, I guess if you could go to an aerial photo, Dustin. The western portion is along Ohio Street, and that has always been used for agricultural purposes. The eastern portion, which is to the right of that line, is historically been part of a sand mining operation. And that sand mining operation was first proposed in 1995, and the plan was amended in 2002 to allow for some additional excavation to the west and to the north of the original sand pit. And if we look at the, I don't know if you have the ability to turn on utilities, Dustin. The two things that come into play here is there is an existing city water distribution system, and that consists of a 12-inch water line that you can see there. It's on the west side of Ohio Street. That was constructed in 2005, and as part of that, there was a cost recovery ordinance and cost recovery charge area with a fee of $696 per acre. And the way that was set up is if you are a commercial development and you hook up to that line, you would pay a proportional fee at the time of a building permit for any commercial development. For residential, you would pay a fee as your development phase of housing units is ready for building permits. So it's primarily, if you look at where the city interceptor line is, which is the green line, from that point west is the area that would be subject to the cost recovery for the water line in Ohio. And so you can see one of the defining factors of this property is the interceptor sewer line, which comes in from the west and then makes an L turn and goes straight north up to Magnolia. And of course there's a pump station on Magnolia Road that's on this pump station farther to the north. So that's really the dominant design feature that this property has to build around, is that interceptor and then the sand pit itself. And of course one of the concerns at the time, and you can see that it got relatively close, but at the time there was concern that we certainly didn't want the sand pit excavation getting into where the sewer was already established. If we look at the other utilities, we have water and sewer in place. For drainage, they plan to utilize the sand pit for their stormwater, so there will be no discharge off the site. They are in West Star and Kansas Gas service territory and can be served from that standpoint. If we look at the adjacent properties, the Bonnie Ridge area, which is long developed, that came into the city in the 1960s. The Liberty Addition that's on the south side of Schilling Road, which is where we have Kennedy & Co. and the Sunflower Bank, that was annexed into the city in 2003. And then on the north side, Quail Meadows Estates was annexed in 2007. And then if we look on the east side of Ohio, you have to get up to the north of the other side of the Knox drainage ditch to find any property that's inside the city limits. This property that is right here off the screen is owned by Stan Byquist. So this property is contiguous to the city limits, and I think the only question that the Planning Commission looked at from the standpoint of annexation was we have Schilling Road at the south end of this property. The county has acquired right-of-way for Schilling Road back when the drainage ditch was constructed in the late 90s. And so there is right-of-way there, but the standard practice has been not to annex the road unless we have development on both sides, or unless the roadway that's within the right-of-way has been upgraded to city standards, and in this case it's not. So the Planning Commission reviewed this annexation request on April 1st, and their recommendation was that the entire 150 acres be brought into the city, but that not include the right-of-way for Schilling Road at the south end. So your options today would be to concur with that and bring the 150 acres of private land into the city, or the other option would be to do that plus to take on the right-of-way, which is right here for Schilling Road. And that is a gravel road, and it's primarily used by trucks entering and leaving the existing sand pits out there, and there's no plan at this time for a street connection to Schilling as part of this development. With that, I'd be happy to address any questions you have about annexation.
Questions, Mr. Andrew?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance number 10-10547 on first reading.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance number 10-10547 on first reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-0.
Item 7.2, application number Z10-1, requesting a change in zoning district classification from Saline County AG to R, R1, R2.5, C1, C2, and C3, and C5 in the Stone Lake Edition. Sub-item 7.2A, first reading ordinance number 10-10548.
Mr. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I told Mr. Mays that he may have set a record for most zoning classifications requested in one application, but I think we have them straight as far as what is proposed for where, and this is a mixed-use development, so we're trying to incorporate both commercial and residential elements into it. And again, this does not happen every day, where you're looking at planning out a land use pattern for a full 150 acres. This is a large tract of land, and obviously it's going to be developed in phases, but this is the opportunity to map out what the land use pattern is going to be. So as we talked about with the annexation, this is 150 acres. There's a plan for mixed use development, and I'll try to work from the east back, but this pattern that you see here that's down in this corner and then repeated over here on Ohio, that is the R2.5, which is a residential classification that would allow apartments, it would allow townhomes, it would also, on a conditional case-by-case basis, if somebody came in and with a small office proposal intermixed here, like the office building up there at Reserves at Prairie Glen, that could be done on a conditional use basis, case-by-case basis, but that is the R2.5. Around the perimeter of the lake is the R, which is a larger lot zoning designation, and these are larger lots could be viewed as more estate type lots. So the R designation is for the lakeside lots. And then the majority of the area along the north here, this interior area here, and this block in here will be R1, which is our conventional or standard size residential development. When this was first discussed by the Planning Commission on February 16th, there was some discussion about having some commercial. This is Shoreline Drive, which is over the top of the interceptor. And so all the commercial that's being discussed is confined from there south. And after discussions with the Planning Commission on the public hearing on the 16th of February, the area requested for C3 zoning was first reduced and then eliminated. So we're talking about C2 zoning. And then the corner piece was talked about as C5 or Plan C5, and we'll get into that in a little more detail. But basically, you've got your densities that step back, so that your lowest density would be back here, except in this corner here and along Schilling, which could have higher residential densities. And so we've gone in there and summarized for you what the various characteristics are of C2 and C5, but C5 is a service commercial, which you could see things like convenience stores or things that might appeal to the traveling public or people coming and going on that Ohio Schilling circuit out, whether they're out to the South 9th Street or to Tony's or the industrial area, that's designed for traffic that's traveling arterial streets. The C2 is smaller lots, and it's designed for things like beauty shops, barber shops, dry cleaning, things like that serve the nearby neighborhood. And so the Planning Commission reviewed all those patterns, and there was also discussion about access and orientation to those lots. So we did include some of the elements of the preliminary plat in your packet there. We also included in your packet the pattern that's on the other side of the street, and I think you have that, Dustin. So this is the opposite corner here, and this is Stan Byquist property, and this is a Plan C5 lot here, which means this is set aside for businesses and services that might be traveling the two arterial streets, and then north of that is the Plan C2 area, which is more of a neighborhood commercial, and this is going west along Schilling Road. And then, Dustin, we also had something that showed how the access could line up potentially. And this just shows if you're looking at the Quail Meadows across the street, this is Joni Lane, which is not built, but is a street that's designed to come out to Schilling. So you'd have Shoreline here, a street here that would go into Quail Meadows and serve the Plan C2 right here, and then this is the Plan C5 area. And so by comparison, this C5 area here is smaller by comparison, and the total commercial area is smaller by comparison, and part of that is because you have the street that parallels Ohio Street there. So the Planning Commission reviewed and discussed this at February 16th meeting. They had a follow-up public hearing on April 1st, and at that meeting, they recommended that the current agricultural zoning be amended to R, single-family residential, R1, single-family residential, R2.5, multifamily residential, as shown, and a Plan C2 for the area south of Shoreline Drive with C5 on the corner. And what was done in Quail Meadows Estates and also in the Liberty Edition was the Planning Commission, City Commission looked at some of the uses at C5 that they thought might not be desirable at this corner. And so on both the southwest corner and the northwest corner, the C5 areas have uses that are normally allowed in C5 that aren't allowed in this particular corridor area. And so there's a letter in your packet from Mr. Mays indicating his willingness to delete certain uses from being considered on this corner. And the way that that was discussed and considered at the Planning Commission was that you would have a straight C5 zoning with certain uses eliminated by private covenant that would then be enforceable by the City of Salina. Since then, we've had some additional discussions, and what makes the most sense for looking at we had a lot of discussion at the Planning Commission about driveways and driveway locations and numbers of driveways, but until you actually have uses, until you actually see a site plan of how sites could be laid out, it's somewhat academic to talk about driveways. So what we discussed with the applicant subsequent to the Planning Commission meeting was to look at Plan C2 and Plan C5 for that, both locations. And what that would mean is that the requirement would be when there's a user identified to come back with a specific site plan that would be reviewed by staff and the Planning Commission, and basically the site plan would become the tool for regulating and locating driveways. So although the recommendation from the Planning Commission was straight C5 zoning with uses adjusted by covenants, I think the applicant is now in agreement that Plan C5, which would eliminate those uses but require a site plan to be reviewed and approved prior to development, is their desired course of action. So with that, it's a very large site with lots of different uses and neighboring properties, so I'd be open to any questions you have, and then we can hear from the applicant.
Questions, Mr. Andrew?
What is that very southern part zoned?
The southern part along Schilling Road,
Right.
this corner is C5,
Got
Plan
that.
C5, then this
Right
would be
there.
R2.5.
Okay.
Which, if you look at the depth of those lots, having a reserves at Prairie Glen type complex was not very realistic. But if somebody wanted to combine lots and do fourplexes or sixplexes or twin homes, that's the idea. And of course, they would be set up so that access would be from the interior street, Crystal Lake, and they would back up to Schilling.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
But R2.5 provides the flexibility to do any combination of units.
I see Martha's here. This might be a question she might want to comment on, but the residential doesn't bother me, and it doesn't bother me at all that much, but I'm just wondering about the relationship between the city's own well system and just looking at runoff and stuff that's going to be basically going into this pit, if there is a relationship at all that's of any concern down the road.
Well, I can just mention that historically, in 1995, the city of Salina was opposed to this sand pit partially for that reason. Because what a sand pit is basically it's a giant well, and it is connected to the groundwater system. And so there were concerns about evaporation off the surface of the lake. There were concerned about areas draining into it and percolating into the groundwater. And some of this relates to an item that's later on your agenda, which is our erosion and sediment control and illicit discharge ordinance, where we'll be looking more closely at having filter strips and things like that to filter things going into this pit, but I'll let Martha speak where our wells are and how this relates to that.
We've had that discussion many times on many different sand pits, and typically the runoff from this area, we typically ask that they try to dike it some to prevent the water just running directly into the pit from any particular contaminants. And Dean mentioned the filter strips, which are hopefully to prevent anything running into this area. We do have other sand pits that do collect some of our storm drainage, so it is allowed currently for storm drain water to make it into the pits, but we try to do as much as we can to collect any harmful contaminants from getting into there. And then our wells are located out in this area, are along more towards down at where the water treatment plant is, the old water treatment plant at Schilling and Waterwell, or Ohio and Waterwell Road, so we're south.
But we don't currently have anything zoned commercial next to any of our open pits, do we?
As far as the sand pits,
Yeah.
I may be speaking a little bit out of what I'm not 100% sure of, but the area from down around the Liberty Addition and some of those drainage ditches in that area do make it to some of the storm drain pits, and Mike may be able to answer that better as far as the storm drain and which one drains into the particular sand pit, or Dean, but I believe the one.
You have in your packet
I think it's
a map that shows what drains into the Knox sand pit.
Would that be the part of the Liberty Addition, or is it north of there?
North.
Mostly north of there. Is there any commercial area covered in that?
Churches and apartments.
Churches, apartments, and that type of thing, but there is a practice of storm drain finding its way to sand pits. Wasn't sure if you were aware of that, so I thought I'd...
Yeah, no, that's helpful. But in your estimation, increased traffic from commercial zoning and washing of parking lots, and et cetera, is not going to pose a significant risk to any sort of...
That, based on, and Dean did mention the new stormwater permitting that's coming into place, based on that and the filter strips that we propose, I don't believe it will be a problem, but we'll definitely be paying attention to that.
Okay. Are there other questions of staff? Any other comments? Jim?
Commissioners, Jim Mace, Tom Pro Realty, 157 South 7th. I'm here to answer any questions that you have. We've reduced the number of zones considerably. We've taken 2 of them out anyway. And as far as the stormwater protection, you will see on the final plat that we're running all of the water through the streets and then into filter strips before it gets to the lake itself.
Okay.
We provided, I think it's 5 total filter strips around it that the water would be channeled through.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance number 10-10548 on first reading.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance number 10-10548 on first reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to administration business.
Item 8.1, second reading ordinance number 10-10544, amending Chapter 24 of the Salina Code by adding Article 2 pertaining to illicit discharge.
This was approved on first reading. Is there any further comment or questions before we move forward with this?
I did have one clarification in addition to the 2 items that are noted in the blue sheet. Those items were in response to the concerns that were raised on first reading, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about those. And then additionally, to be consistent with our commitment to give 90 days lead time and a policy change, the effective date of this ordinance and the next ordinance should be 90 days after publication, which I noted we didn't get reflected in the verbiage that you have before you today.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I might also add that if the modified language meets the approval of the commission, it would probably be best to note that the ordinance is approved on second reading as amended.
Okay, very good. Any public comment? Bring this back to the commission.
Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance number 10-10544, amending Chapter 24 of the Salina Code by adding Article 2 pertaining to illicit discharge.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance number 10-10544 as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Excuse me. Thank you, Lucy. Would the clerk please call roll? This is second reading.
Commissioner Angel?
Aye.
Commissioner Jennings?
Aye.
Commissioner Larson?
Aye.
Mayor Peck?
Aye. Motion carries 4-0.
Item 8.2, second reading ordinance number 10-10545, amending Chapter 24 of the Salina Code by adding Article 3 pertaining to erosion control.
Okay, again, this was passed on first reading on May 10th, and since that time, no comments have been received. Are there any further questions or comments from staff?
This ordinance should reflect a 90-day effective date 90 days after publication as well.
Okay. We don't need to necessarily mention that in adopting it at this point, do we? Or should that language be added?
That probably would be best, yes,
Okay.
Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor, I move that we adopt on second reading ordinance number 10-10545, amending Chapter 24 of the Salina Code by adding Article 3 pertaining to erosion control
Within
90 days, within 90 days of today,
publication.
of publication.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded we adopt ordinance number 10-10545. All in favor, say aye. Gosh, this is, I'm scatterbrained. Would the clerk please call roll?
Commissioner Angel?
Aye.
Commissioner Jennings?
Aye.
Commissioner Larson?
Aye.
Mayor Peck?
Aye, motion carries 4-0.
Item 8.3, resolution number 106742, amending the comprehensive fee schedule by establishing a stormwater pollution prevention plan fee.
Mr. Franz?
Actually, I think I can take this one as well. This is a follow-up item for the two ordinances that you just passed, and the plan review fee was set to be similar to a site plan review fee that's already in effect. It's basically the fee for staff to review the erosion control plan that would now be required.
Okay. Any questions of staff? Any public comment? See none, I'll bring this back to the commission.
Let me ask a quick question. Is that, so if I understand this correctly, a project's brought forward, and you have the plan review fee, and then there always will be a stormwater prevention plan? Is that correct on most or all developments?
Most developments there will. So when a
So that's why
stormwater
it
pollution
just has a separate fee?
Correct.
Okay.
So much like we currently get a site plan submitted for staff review and approval, when applicable, a stormwater pollution prevention plan will be submitted. We call it a SWIP for short. That would have been easier. Is submitted for review and approval, and this would be the fee to conduct that review.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll accept a motion.
Mayor, I move we adopt resolution number 10-6742.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number 10-6742. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0.
Item 8.4, resolution number 106736, authorizing a farm lease agreement with Dennis Swinson and Galen Swinson.
Mr. Frazier.
Mayor and Commissioners, the City of Salina has leased this farm ground to the Swinsons since 1977. The current agreement is going to be expiring this summer. Now, there are three changes that are in the proposed new agreement. The pasture ground rent will increase from $16 to $22 per acre. The city's share of the gross revenues will increase from 40 to 42%, and the city's share of the Department of Agricultural subsidy will increase from 40 to 42%. Revenues from the cultivated, non-irrigated farm ground last year was $70.86 an acre. Now, when you compare that to what the average Saline County non-irrigated ground goes for at $54.20 an acre, we did quite well. The richer bottom ground goes for about anywhere from $60 to $80 an acre. And the pasture ground for Saline County, the average is $21.84 an acre. With the long-term lease agreement possible with the Swinsons, the profitability with a cost-sharing agreement, and the outstanding past management that we've had with the Swinsons operating the farm lease, staff is recommending that the contract be renewed with the Swinsons for an additional 5 years. Revenues generated from this lease will go to the Solid Waste Fund, and staff recommends the City Commission adopt Resolution 106736, authorizing the mayor to sign a 5-year farm lease agreement on the landfill property with Dennis Swinson and Galen Swinson. We'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Questions, Mr. Frazier?
Have we been renewing this lease in 5-year increments?
The last one was a 5-year agreement. Greg might be able to comment on before that. If they seemed there was one before that that was a longer term. But the last one was 5 years term.
I don't recall, but Mr. Swinson may.
Dennis Swinson. I'd have to go back in history. There was, I think, maybe 2 10-year ones back when there wasn't much movement or changes at the landfill.
Okay.
But then when things changed as far as the requirements for all the pits and everything, I think went to a 5-year because the acreage changes at that point in time. And so I know the last 2, I think, have been 5 years.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any further questions? Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring this back to the commission.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve Resolution 106736, authorizing the mayor to sign a 5-year farm lease agreement on the landfill property with Dennis Swenson and Galen Swenson.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number 10-6736. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-0.
Item 8.5, authorize staff to complete the survey, design, and solicit bids for the Armory Road Waterline Project number 10-2831.
Ms. Tasker?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. As you may remember, the 5-year capital improvement program includes $4 million per year for water line improvements. And these improvements are intended to improve both the water quality and fire protection throughout our water distribution system. Staff is currently reviewing a draft list of waterline projects that's been prepared by professional engineering consultants. We anticipate having that list reviewed and have it to a point to where we could bring it to the City Commission for approval within the next month or so. Currently, we have a proposed project on Armory Road that is necessitating the need to expedite a portion of 12-inch water line to allow for fire protection and water quality. To take a look at the screen to give you an idea of where we're at, this would be the Kmart store. And currently, there's a 12-inch water line located along the west side or the back side of the building. And this being Armory Road and Broadway at this point. On this end, there's a 6-inch line that extends back to this point and ends with a fire hydrant. The proposed plan is to install a 12-inch water line that would continue through and connect and make a loop of this water line. As a result, it will improve both the water quality and fire protection in this area. Staff intends to complete the survey, design, and solicit bids if approved by the City Commission. The estimated cost for this water line extension is $72,000, and it will be included in the CIP list that we bring to you within the next month or so. A cost recovery ordinance is planned to recover a portion of the cost for the properties that currently do not have a water line and have not paid their share of cost. Staff recommends that the City Commission authorize staff to complete the survey, design, and solicit bids for the Armory Road Waterline Project number 102831. At this time, I would be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Questions of Ms. Tasker? This would be servicing the new development that's proposed to go in there as well?
As well, currently, we have another project that's down in this area for a building addition that requires additional flow
okay, that's
protection.
further down.
But it would also be in place for the new development that's proposed there, so
Okay.
assuming that all falls into place, so.
But if I may, the status of that proposed project is they asked for our endorsement to apply for tax credits, so it's still up in the air as to whether they're designated the tax credits and whether the project would
That's
go
the one
through.
further south that you're talking about.
It's actually in the curve of Armory Road to
That would
the
be that.
northeast.
Okay, that's the one.
The
Okay.
housing development.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it will hopefully serve more than the purpose I'm referencing, but that hasn't fallen into place yet.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring this back to the commission.
Mayor, I make a motion that we authorize staff to complete the survey, design, and solicit bids for the Armory Road Waterline Project number 10-2831.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Armory Road Waterline Project number 10-2831. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0.
Item 8.6, resolution number 10-6741, authorizing a license agreement with the Coronado Council of Boy Scouts of America to allow a placement of a sign in the public right-of-way.
Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a request to authorize a license agreement that would allow a sign to be placed in the public right-of-way out in the intersection area of 9th Street, Planet Avenue, and Magnolia Road. And the Coronado Council here in Salina was established in 1910. It's observing its 100th year of service to the community this year. Troop 1 is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Boy Scout troop in the United States. And this local group of Boy Scouts recently completed a service project, which you may have noticed out there, where they planted 7 pear trees in a grassy strip of the right-of-way there directly west of the intersection on the north side. And this is an area that was previously identified as an area in need of tree plantings to dress that up and kind of match what's been done on the south side. And so to commemorate their anniversary and also to take note of the location of the service project, they had a 3x5 limestone sign carved, which I think you have a vision of that in your packet. And they wish to place that at the site of their tree planting project, both to note their project and to put a commemorative sign that was in a place that was prominent and visible. And so we informed the Boy Scout troop that that particular location is publicly owned street and drainage right-of-way, and that a city commission would have to authorize the placement of that through a license agreement. So we've had that process where an application for license agreement's been submitted. You can see the elevation of the sign proposed, and that red line there indicates the proposed location of the sign. Both myself and Steve Blue, the city forester, met on site with the Boy Scouts, reviewed the site. There's no irrigation systems in that area. There's no utilities or traffic visibility issues in that particular location. And so that was agreed upon by all parties as the best location for that. But being in the right-of-way, this license agreement that's before you would document that they've been granted formal approval to place that in the right-of-way, but that the City of Salina is not responsible for repair or replacement or ongoing maintenance of that sign. The area in question is mowed and maintained by the city's General Services Division, and the trees will be maintained by the Parks Department, but this is to spell out that the sign itself is the property and the responsibility of the Boy Scouts of America, and the city will not take any responsibility for keeping it maintained, but we will be responsible for the trees. So our recommendation would be to approve the license agreement that's before you, authorizing the placement of that sign in that proposed location. And with that, I'd be happy to address any questions.
Questions, Mr. Andrew?
Thank you.
Stacy, could you come up? I had a couple questions.
Stacy Huff, Boy Scouts of America.
Thank you. I'm probably overthinking this too much, but it does seem like that would be a location that would be sort of appropriate for a welcome to Salina type sign. Anyway, my ultimate question is, help me think through, obviously this is a highly visible location, but there's a lot of nonprofit groups out there that probably would love to have that kind of recognition as well. Help me think through this location and sort of how it ties in with scouting in Salina.
Okay. Well, our current office is located at 644 South Ohio, more on the north side of town. This would be visibility for us to recognize the centennial anniversary of the Boy Scouts. We have existed, and as Dean Andrew pointed out, one of the most historic troops in this part of the country, if not the country, is, you know, it's noted on the sign as well. Salina, Kansas is prominently, you know, the name of the town featured on the sign. We did the service project there at that location. We plan to put some additional trees in at that location. We also plan to put about 150 trees a little further down Magnolia at the soccer park as a windbreak. So that particular location appealed to us.
Okay. Thank you for that. Is there any other questions, Mr. Huff? Thanks. Any public comment? Bring this back to the commission.
Mayor, I move that we adopt resolution number 10-6741.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number 10-6741. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0.
Item 8.7, authorization of the filing of suit on behalf of the public entities against the United States of America for the purpose of recovering all allowable costs resulting from the hazardous substance contamination at the former Schilling Air Force Base and securing needed response and remediation efforts to clean up the contamination.
Seems odd that this is one sheet. Mr. Bingston.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners. This matter received coverage and attention last week, as you are probably aware, with the League of Women Voters and media briefing that occurred last Thursday. This is part of the effort of the four public entities, as you're aware, the city, the Salina Airport Authority, USD 305, and Kansas State University at Salina are involved in addressing the soil and groundwater contamination resulting from the use and disposal of chlorinated solvents during the time that the former Schilling Air Force Base was in active military duty from 1942 to 1965. The United States government is responsible through the Department of Defense for investigation and remediation of those types of problems, and the Corps of Engineers is the lead agency on behalf of the United States. As you'll recall, the matter has been assigned to the Department of Justice in anticipation of working toward a negotiated settlement with the public entities so that the public entities can take responsibility and control locally for carrying out the remaining investigative work and the remediation of the environmental problem. We are at a point in those negotiations where, by virtue of a number of circumstances, the Environmental Council, representing all of the public entities, has advised us that it is the time to place on file the complaint that would initiate the actual suit in federal district court. As you might imagine, in order to carry out a settlement, and certainly settlement negotiations will continue just as they have following the filing of the suit, but it is within the context of that suit that the settlement can be ultimately agreed upon and implemented under the direction of the federal district court. So that's what brings us to today and the request that you approve that filing. Environmental Council has prepared that complaint and in fact has provided that complaint to the Department of Justice, so they are certainly well aware of the circumstances and our sense of the necessity of getting that on file. Last week, the Salina Airport Authority acted authorizing the filing of the suit, and the school board meets tomorrow evening and will be considering a similar motion as the one that has been presented for your consideration. As you'll see, the motion that we have proposed is contingent upon all four of the entities authorizing the filing of the suit. It is also contingent upon settlement not being reached before May 29th of 2010. We are confident that settlement will not be reached and fully implemented by that time, that it will be necessary to place the suit on file. But as I said, certainly negotiations will continue, and all will continue to work toward the objective of identifying the appropriate level of funding necessary for the local entities to take control of the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of Mr. Bankston?
If the motion meets your approval, it would be best to actually begin stating it where it begins, contingent upon, so on and so forth.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, contingent upon USD 305, the Salina Airport Authority and K-State Salina taking action to provide identical authorization. Read all that. Mm-hmm. All four of these entities being known collectively as the public entities, and in the event successful negotiation with the United States of America to accomplish these objectives is not concluded before May 29th of 2010, I move that the City Commission of Salina, Kansas authorize the filing of a suit on behalf of the public entities against the United States of America for the purpose of recovering all allowable costs resulting from the hazardous substance contamination at the former Schilling Air Force Base and securing needed response and remediation efforts to clean up the contamination.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that contingent upon USD 305, the Salina Airport Authority and K-State Salina taking action to provide identical authorization that the City Commission file suit on behalf of the public entities against the United States of America for recovering all allowable costs resulting from the hazardous substance contamination at the former Schilling Air Force Base and securing needed response and remediation efforts to clean up the contamination. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-0.
Item 8.8, resolution number 10-6744, authorizing the City of Salina to file a quiet title action in District Court of Saline County to revest title to abandoned cemetery spaces in Gibson Hill Cemetery.
Mayor, if I may, I'll introduce that item quickly. We appreciate very much that over the past several months, as the Commission knows, we've had the assistance of Laura Seaton on a number of city-related projects as she was back in Salina preparing for the bar exam and fortunately passing it. As Laura prepares to transition to life in Lawrence, I'm pleased to report that she can report to us on this final significant step on one of those projects that she has handled for us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Laura.
Very good. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm also representing the city and asking you to file a lawsuit today, but this is much less contentious. We're requesting your permission to reclaim abandoned cemetery spaces in Gypsum Hill under a procedure laid out in Kansas state law. As you know, the City of Salina owns and operates Gypsum Hill Cemetery, which has a shortage of spaces available for sale to the public. Each year there are about 100 burials and then separately 50 to 100 spaces that are sold to the general public for future use. In particular, groups and families wishing to purchase more than 2 adjacent spaces are limited in their selection, as the spaces that remain are kind of one here and there. There are more than 8,000 spaces that are owned but not currently used for interment. We believe that many of these are abandoned, and I'll give you just one example of why this could happen. So in the late 1800s, a lot of families would come to Salina and perhaps think that they were going to settle here permanently, and perhaps they would lose an infant or something like that. And so they might bury their infant and buy the other 15 spaces in the lot thinking that that would be their family plot, but then circumstances would change, they would move along. So there would be 15 empty spaces with a record owner from 1880. And so these are what we're calling abandoned spaces. This actually is so common that Kansas has passed a statute to allow us to revest or reclaim title to these spaces. So then we could sell them to the public, to groups today that would like to buy them. So up here you have a flow chart that shows you how we decided what was truly abandoned. We've been incredibly careful. Kansas law deems a cemetery space abandoned if the owner has not had occasion to make an interment, inquiry, or transfer of the space in the last 50 years. And the city decided to be even more conservative, and we've gone with an 80-year figure. So what this means is that since before 1930, no one has been buried there or in the plot surrounding it. So if one person owned 16 spaces, no one has been buried in any of those. There hasn't been inquiry, transfer, or sale. So that is how we got from the 8,000 spaces you see at the top down to the 3,000 where we applied that 80-year rule. Then we further narrowed that by doing everything we could to see if any of these owners were still living or if their descendants could be identified. Some number, I think we can see there, of the spaces were represented owners who themselves were actually buried in Gypsum Hill, so we're of course certain that they're deceased. And the others, we checked the city directory, contacted the sheriff, and all of this is in the statutory procedure. When that was all said and done, we were left with 2,500 spaces. And of those, we published notice in the newspaper. We had 4 inquiries from the public. One was able to provide evidence that they're a descendant of one of these individuals. The other 3 ranged from things such as, I think I might be, and Cindy Wolf, the clerk, says, well, who? And they say, I'm not sure, let me get back to you. So anyway, we removed all of those, and what's left finally is this 2515 figure. So what we're asking today is step 9 on the flow chart, which says that we need your official authorization to file a suit in district court, which Greg would do, and that would give us official title to these presumably abandoned spaces. If you were to give your approval, the final step would be to check and make sure that they were all suitable, and then over approximately the next 15 years, we expect we would sell these to the public for, at today's rate of $400 per space, would be about $1 million in the next 15 years. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the process.
Thank you. Questions, Laura?
For the people that don't read the paper or see any of that, is anyone trying to contact people or word of mouth, or is there any way that this is going to come back and bite us in the back?
That was exactly what we wanted to avoid, and so what we did, the best way to address that was we looked through probate records in Saline County, and so if someone had probated here, then we took their name out. So it means at a minimum that all those people either are buried in Gypsum Hill Cemetery or they did probate somewhere else, and so they had moved on, meaning that we couldn't find them.
So are some of these spots like in part of the oldest part of the cemetery?
Exactly.
So we're going to have new burials, possibly mixed with these really old. In other words, you'll have one with a tombstone that says 18 something, and then you'll have a 2012.
That's the idea. If you think about, so the east edge there on Marymount, and then the west is goes up to block 37, which is the newest block, and that's where most of the new spaces are being sold today. And so if you think about towards the west, and especially if you're going on the south side, if you ever happen to walk through there, you'll notice it's not very dense. They have, because of what I was describing, where you might have 1 or 2 spaces out of 16 that are purchased. And then if you go more on the north side, you'll see that it's, as you would expect, a headstone every so many feet. And so, anyway, evening that out.
Okay.
Sort of a mixed development.
Exactly.
Mixed development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions? Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring this back to the commission.
Mayor, I move that we adopt resolution number 10-6744, authorizing the city of Salina to file a quiet title action in the District Court of Saline County to revest title to abandoned cemetery spaces in Gypsum Hill Cemetery.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number 10-6744. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0.
Mayor, I move to recess into executive session for 20 minutes to discuss with legal counsel matters subject to the attorney-client privilege for the reason that public discussion of those matters would waive the privilege and adversely affect the city's interest in the matters, and reconvene at 5:27 p.m.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we recess into executive session for 20 minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Do you expect any action?
No, we do not.
Thank you. We're in executive session.